Okay, so yesterday we saw the structure. Yesterday we saw the structure of the coronavirus. Today we'll be studying about the diagnosis part. Okay. So the diagnosis is the first step for treatment and eradication of the infectious disease. So until and unless you do not identify the people who have got the infection, you cannot isolate them, you cannot treat them, and you cannot curb the spread of the infection. Okay, so there are various methods of identifying that organism, diagnosing the disease. Okay, there are direct methods. That means you directly identify the presence of that infectious agent. In this case, the coronavirus. Okay, so you find out it's present. In case of bacteria, it is easy. We can just grow the organism in the laboratory, and using biochemical analysis, you can analyze. You can find out the causative agent. But in case of viruses, the direct identification can be done using antigen of the virus, detection of the antigen of the virus using monoclonal antibodies. Okay, but this is not a very good method because the number of viruses in the specimen could be very little. Okay, very less in numbers. So then the diagnosis may not be very accurate. Okay. The next method is PCR amplification. Here, the even if very little amount of number of viruses are present in the specimen, there is a amplification which is happening. Okay, amplification means even if there are few number of viruses and viral genomes are less in number, will be amplified several millions of times, and then we are going to detect it. So it becomes easy for the uh, detection methodology, and the accuracy is increased. There's an indirect method which is also available, which depends on the antibodies produced by the person who's infected. This we are going to study tomorrow, and there are various pros and cons as to which method should be used when. We'll be discussing all this later. Okay, so now we come to the basics of polymerase chain reaction. I've already sent a video link of this principle behind PCR, which you must have already seen. Okay, just to recap a little, it is the using various temperatures, we amplify the DNA in a test tube. Okay, so even if there are few viral amplicons present in the specimen, okay, they can be amplified several number of times, and then we can detect the presence. So in a normal PCR, we run the PCR for around 25 to 30 cycles to get huge number of um uh, the DNA which is amplified, and then it is detected using agarose gel electrophoresis. You take out this, you stop the reaction, you take out the sample, load it on the gel, run the gel, and whatever size of the DNA you're expecting, if that size DNA is present, that means you get a positive result. So these are the basic steps. Okay, you can see here. Uh, so please tell me what is the step number 1 called. You can tell it in the chat box. Yes, somebody has written denaturation. Correct. Second step, Namita and Vaishnavi and Riddhi have written annealing. Correct. Then the third step is extension or polymerization. Correct. So looks like you all have gone through the video. Good. So these are the basic steps. This first cycle is the one in which you have the template DNA. Then these second cycle, it becomes double of whatever has been is present. Third cycle, it becomes double of that. So it exponentially increases in every cycle. And in the end, you can check using agarose gel electrophoresis. So that is normal PCR. But here we don't the nucleic acid that we want to detect in case of virus, this coronavirus, it is not a DNA, it is an RNA. So if we so if you want to detect RNA, okay, you cannot use a simple PCR test which we have just seen. We require another type of test which is it is called as reverse transcripted test PCR, because the what we want to detect is not a DNA, it is an RNA. So first we want to convert this RNA into a DNA. So that step requires a different type of polymerase. Which type of polymerase is required in PCR? Please answer in the text box. Which type of polymerase or which type of enzyme is required in normal PCR? Yes, Taq DNA polymerase. Okay, extracted from Thermus aquaticus. But before you do that polymerization, correct. Before you do that polymerization, in case of detecting RNA viruses, we need to have convert this RNA into cDNA. So this is normal transcription is from DNA to RNA. This is reverse. So RNA to DNA called as reverse transcription. So we need to do this reverse transcriptase PCR first, and this is called as RT-PCR. Okay. So once we convert it into cDNA, it can be further amplified using normal Taq polymerases, and we can get amplified product. Okay. Now again here also at the end of the polymerization, you can remove the sample, you can load it on the gel and again run. So this whole process of running the PCR and then taking out the sample and putting it in the agarose gel and then checking for the presence or absence of the sample takes a lot of time. So instead of doing it on a normal agarose gel electrophoresis, the detection nowadays is done using something called as real-time PCR. Okay, so this real-time PCR, I'll just explain you the principle behind this. Okay, here we want to know when this reaction is happening, when the amplification is happening, we want that we should understand whether it is happening simultaneous, means whether the amplification is taking place or it is not taking place, and the output should be given to us as and when the reaction is happening. Okay, so for that what they do is, along with the primers, so primers will be amplifying the DNA. Along with this primer, they put one probe. So what is this probe? This probe has a sequence. It is also a DNA sequence. This sequence is complementary to the sequence which we want to amplify. Okay, it is specific to that particular DNA which we are amplifying. Okay, like how primers are specific, similarly the probe is also specific to that portion of the DNA which we want to amplify. Okay, so these primers will attach and the DNA polymerase will start polymerizing. You can see here it will start polymerizing the DNA. Once it comes to this probe, which has two features, it has one fluorophore and it has one quencher. So I'll just briefly tell you, fluorophore is a substance which when it is exposed to a particular radiation, it emits a fluorescent light. It will absorb the radiation and it will emit the light in visible range. Okay, but there is a substance called as a quencher. This quencher, if it is present near the fluorophore, it will not emit this fluorophore. Whatever is emitting, the light is absorbed by the quencher, and the detection will not happen. There will not be any light which is going to get detected by the detector. But when this fluorophore and the quencher, they go away from each other, then the fluorophore will start fluorescing and we'll get the fluorescence detected. So here in the second step, when the polymerase is extending, in the third step it comes near the probe, and the polymerase has a 3' to 5' exonuclease activity. Okay, this is polymerase activity. That means it is adding nucleotides. Exonuclease means it will remove the nucleotides.
Okay, one by one it will remove. See, one nucleotide will be separated from the probe, okay, which the attached probe. And this is how the fluorophore and the quencher will go away from each other, and now the fluorescence will start getting detected. So this is the principle of real-time PCR. So this is how it looks. You can see here, these are the parts of the PCR machine. Thermal cycler is there, wherein the temperature, heating, cooling, we need various temperatures, okay, for denaturation, annealing, and extension. We need 3 different temperatures. So that is brought about by this thermal cycler, okay. And then above this thermal cycler, this part is there. It is the one which is going to be giving the light source, and there is a detector of fluorescent light, okay. And this also should have a complementary software which will be recording and plotting the graph of how much of emission has been detected, and the report will be generated using the software. Okay, so basic steps of coronavirus detection: you have to collect the specimen. The specimen in this case is either a throat swab from the nasal cavity, or a from nasopharynx, oropharynx, or it can be a sputum sample, or it can be lung aspirate. Okay, so along with the detection using PCR, it is also recommended by the doctors to see the CT scan. So both these tests are together taken, and then the diagnosis is concluded by the doctors. So next step, once the throat swab is taken, RNA extraction is done. Okay, so the swab is directly inserted into a buffer, which will first lyse the outer membrane of the virus, okay, in turn inactivating the virus, okay. And the internal RNA is extracted. This extracted RNA is taken for is used as a clinical sample for further amplification. So what are these primers which are used? Okay, there are 3 primers which are used, 3 sets of primers. Okay, means 3 sets of 2 primers each. Okay, one will specifically identify the N1 protein of coronavirus 2. The second will identify the N2 protein of coronavirus 2. Okay, these 2 will increase the specificity, because why we require 2 primers which will identify the virus? Okay, because there are other coronaviruses and various other viruses and bacteria which are present, which will be present in the throat swab. Plus there will be cells which belong to the humans, that is, that person's cells will also be present. So RNA from all these cells will be extracted. Okay, but we want to amplify only the coronaviral RNA. So what we do is we use 2 sets of primers which will identify specifically the RNA of the virus, and there is an internal positive control. This primer will not identify the virus, it will just identify one of the RNA present in the human cell. Okay, this is called as a internal positive control. That means it will just tell us that the reaction is working properly. Okay, all the DNTPs, the thermal cycler, the detection machinery, everything is properly working. So every reaction, this positive control has to come out positive. Okay, that will tell us that the reaction has occurred properly. Now, how does the machine detect this? So there's a threshold fluorescence. Okay, a little bit of fluorescence will be coming, so from the reaction mixture. But when this threshold fluorescence, it meets the it increases to a level that it can be detected by the detector. Okay, that is called as a threshold fluorescence. So here you can see here, it is called as CT. CT is the cycle number. So what happens is, initially that if there is a single viral RNA, it will be first converted to DNA. Then that one single DNA, cDNA, will be converted to 2, 2 will become 4. So at every cycle there will be increase in the number of DNA which has been amplified. But still there will not be sufficient fluorescence which will be detected by the detector. Okay, but there will be a point, there will be a cycle at which sufficient number of fluorophores are available and emitting huge amount of fluorescence. So that happens at a particular, so in this case it is 21st cycle, it has started showing, the machine has started detecting the fluorescence, and then later on it will become, the fluorescence will keep on increasing, because as then when the number of cycle increases, the amount of fluorescence will also increase. So this cycle at which first time the fluorescence is detected is called as the, it crosses the threshold limit, is called as the CT. Okay, now from this understanding, please tell me how, what will be the
Result of first sample, if this is the output of the machine.
sample 1, will it be positive or negative? Please answer in the chat box. Yes, anybody? Yeah, first will be negative, correct. Many of y'all have answered correctly. So first will be negative. Now what about second? Second will be strongly positive. You can see a huge amount of fluorescence which has been detected. The CT is also less. Okay, that means the load, viral load is very high in this case. Okay, in the say 13th cycle itself, it has crossed the threshold. Huge number of viruses are present in sample number 2. Okay, now what about sample number 3? Sample number 3 is also positive because it is above the threshold, but it has, compared to 2, it has less number of viruses. Okay, so this method can not only be qualitative, it can also be quantitative. It can be both used for identifying whether the virus is there or not. It can also be used to identify how much of virus is there. Okay, what about okay, 3 is positive. What about 4? Again positive, but less fluorescence, correct. So less number of viral particles must be present. Okay, what about 5? 5 is again just touching, almost even not touching the threshold, so it will be negative, correct. Good, you're following the
Explanation, I hope. Okay, so now this is the way they interpret the result. Okay, if both these primers are giving positive result, okay, and then how to differentiate within a reaction mixture, they will have 2 primers and 1 internal control. All the 3 probes will be giving a fluorescence of a different color. So if N1 is giving red color fluorescence, N2 will give yellow color fluorescence, and internal control will give a say blue color fluorescence. So within a reaction, you can identify whether all these 3 are present, positive or negative. So is in order for that result to be positive, okay, both these proteins or the genes have to come positive. Okay, and the internal control also preferably should be positive. Okay, then the person will be considered to be positive for coronavirus. Now if any one of this is negative, then the result, or then that reaction is considered to be inconclusive, because something must have gone wrong. Either there are very some one of it is positive, one of it is negative, so proper RNA extraction is not happening, or some problem has happened, or some DNTPs are not working, or TAC is not working. There could be many problems which could occur due to which it is showing this kind of a result. So it is considered to be inconclusive, and the action is it has to be repeated. The swab, the fresh sample has to be taken from the person, and it is to be repeated. When both are negative and the internal control is positive, then your result is
definitely the person is not having coronavirus. Okay, so here when both are positive and RP is positive, it is the person is having coronavirus. And if both these are negative and the internal control is positive, that means it is the person is free of coronavirus. And this last interpretation, when all the three are negative, again you cannot conclude. Why? Because something has gone wrong, none of the amplification has happened. So at least this should have been positive. So in this case also, the interpretation or the action which is to be taken is that the reaction has to be repeated. You have to take a fresh sample and repeat the whole test. Okay. Now we come to the advantages and disadvantages of this method. You have any questions regarding the test or the interpretation? Please ask me now. Any query, any doubts, or everybody has followed properly? Followed properly, at least say yes. Okay, Akanksha has answered yes. Only one person has understood, I guess. Okay, everybody. Priti, Oza, Namita, Komal. Okay. So you all are not sleeping, that means good. Okay, okay. Yes. Sreyash, Vaishnavish, Shahin, Reet. No queries. Good. Okay. So we go to the next slide. Now we come to the advantages and disadvantages. So, so this is a very crucial test which is done for detection of. You must have seen in papers, in media, everywhere. This coronavirus test in India, they are saying that they are not doing it very rampantly, and even all over the world, testing has been in South Korea. Testing is done in large amount. And in various places, in some countries it is not done to that extent. So there are various speculations about the testing, which is to be how much it is to be done and what method should be used. But the gold standard in detecting coronavirus, at least till now, is using reverse transcriptase PCR, and that too by abiding to these regulations which have been given by the CDC. Okay, so why it is an advantage, or what is the benefit of this reaction is, it is definitely detecting the presence of the virus. Why? Because of the specificity. And what is giving it the specificity? How is it specifically identifying only the coronavirus?
Any idea what can you tell about the specificity of this reaction? Because of the sequence of the primers. What is RP? Simran? Okay, so basically the primer sequence, which is unique to these viruses, we are using as a using for amplification. Okay, so the sequence of primer is unique and it detects only the virus of our interest and nothing else from the specimen. So it becomes a accurate measure of the presence of the virus. So it detects the virus, hence effectively identifies the infected individual. So what is the main purpose of doing this diagnosis? So that we can start treating the person, isolate the person, and not allow him to come in contact with the others, so that he will not spread the contagion. So that is achieved using this test. Then secondly, it helps to detect the recovered patients also. So after 15 to 20 days, once the symptoms and all have gone, how will you understand that the person is completely cured of this virus? Is to do the test again. Okay, so it is done after 15 days. Once the person has recovered, the same test is repeated, and when he shows double negative for both the primer sets N1 and N2, then the person is, and
internal positive showing positive, then the person is known to be negative for the virus. And this test is repeated. It is repeated after 3 days. Okay, again it should give a negative test. Okay, so only after 2 negative reports the person is considered to be negative for the virus and is discharged, okay, safely. Then this test can detect, see, this test is not only done on the patient who is showing the symptoms, it is also done to the relatives of the person or the people who come in contact with the people, that infected person. This test can be done even on these people, so that if a person is asymptomatic, that pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic. See, in this is a very unique type of infection in which even before the person shows the symptoms, he can spread the infection to others. So if a person comes in contact with an infected person, then that person is also, his test is also done, so that you can identify whether he has been infected or not. Okay. Secondly, there are out of say 100 people who come in contact with the person who is infected, okay, maybe almost 80% of them who are getting the virus may not get the infection. So here there is a difference between getting the virus and getting getting that disease. COVID disease is not there, but the coronavirus virus is there. Those people are called as asymptomatic individuals. So it is very important to detect the presence of viruses in these asymptomatic individuals, so that we can quarantine those people also and not allow the spread to the other people. So these are the advantages of this test which we are doing, which is because of the high specificity. But there is also there are few limitations. One is that though it is specific, it is not 100%, it will not give the correct result. Okay, so it is recommended by CDC itself that along with this test, the doctors are also supposed to see the CT scan of the chest. Okay, it is kind of an X-ray, computerized tomography. Large number of X-rays are taken of the chest at different levels, and they produce this image which will show whether there is any inflammation in the chest. So these two tests together are helping the doctors to decide whether the person is positive for the coronavirus. So there are certain false negatives. So 20% to 30% positive people may show negative test. So it should be repeated repeated, even if it is negative, and if the person is known to have come in contact with a infected person, that test has to be repeated. Now, cost wise also it is very expensive. You will understand why it is expensive. So many fluorophores of different fluorescence wavelength are used. Okay, specific primers which are to be synthesized. The synthetic oligonucleotides, that is primers, are to be used. The probes are to be used. The machine which is there, real-time PCR machine which can detect the fluorescence, is also very costly. Okay, so the overall cost of every test comes to around 4,500, which is quite expensive. So imagine a family of 4 people who has to go through this kind of a test with from their own pockets, and then first it will come positive, then after 15 days they have to again repeat, then after 3-4 days again repeat. So 4 people, so you can imagine the amount of money which will be utilized only for the test. Okay, not the treatment, only the test. So that way it is very expensive. Though it is said that there are subsidies given at government hospitals, but if you are doing it at private hospitals, it will be costing 4,500 to whatever 5,000, etc. And lastly, the limitation is that it is time consuming. Okay, it will take around 4 to 8 hours. As such, the whole reaction may get completed in 2 to 3 hours, but the sample has to be prepared for those many. So if it is a 96 well plate, so at least 30 to 40 samples have to be collected, their RNA has to be extracted, and then the PCR machine has to be run. So it will take around 4 to 8 hours to give a conclusive report. So these are the advantages and limitations. Okay. Now again, I'll come to you. If you all have any questions, please ask. I'm waiting for your questions. If any, if no, then you can just tell, you can show your thumbs up. I can go ahead and conclude the session. No queries? Okay, who has raised the hand means you have query. If you have no query, then you should give a thumbs up. Okay. So we will conclude. Okay. So now just before going, I have to give you some food for thought. Okay, there is some test called as Feluda. You just find out about it. It has been developed by two Indian scientists. I want you all to find out about it and put it in the COVID group, which we have made on the WhatsApp. Okay, whenever you so between today and tomorrow, you can search on Google, find out what it is. Okay, this is a novel kind of a test which is developed, not yet been used, but developed by Indians. So we should be proud of it. The other type of test which is used for diagnosis is going to be discussed by Tanya ma'am tomorrow. That is the antibody test. Any queries? I guess then we can end the session. Okay. Does it take 4 to 8 hours to detect one sample? Yeah, it will not take 4 to 8 hours to detect one sample, but you cannot run the whole RT-PCR for one sample. It will become all the more costly. So it has to be at least 30, 10, 15 samples have to be processed, and then you can run, because at a time inside the machine you can keep several PCR tubes and you can detect at the same time all the samples, like how I had shown you in the graph. Sample 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Together you can detect in a single graph. Okay. So even if it may not take for a single reaction to complete for 4 to 8 hours, but to collect 10 to 15 samples together and then run the reaction, it will take that much. And suppose in case the reaction becomes inconclusive, again the patient's swab has to be taken. So the whole thing takes around that much time. Any other questions? Okay. So again, for this, the reading material will be will be sent to y'all. Okay. As well as this PPT will be sent to y'all, and if I can find interesting videos which are related to this today's topic, I will send. You read all these things and be ready for the quiz tomorrow. Again, tomorrow will be the quiz. Tomorrow we'll be taking it a little early. No, like 1:45. We'll be sending like how we did today. And then after you finish the quiz, we will start with the next session. Okay. We stop. Thank you.